Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to look at some scrolls. So you have an idea how to paint the flowers, and hopefully you've been practicing some of those blossoms and practicing some of the things you've seen in some of the lessons. And you can see how I vary some of them and try to get the interest. Now we're going to talk about the scrolls. The scrolls have an interesting history, and I have a lot of DVDs on the history of the scrolls, so I don't want to go too much into it, but I do want to just show you some of the variations of the scrolls and why. So each of the lessons is going to show you some different looks to the scrolls. And in a brief history of the scrolls, which is written up for you, so you can watch that, you can read that as well. But the Canthus Scrolls, of course, come from 600 BC Greece, and they are the foundation of all designs. It's the acanthus, which is actually it's like a weed growing, in Greece. And they use these scroll shapes that you see in here, which are called volutes. It's volutes. They're the volutes. What they are is basically the acanthus. They're turning acanthus vine, and then it has these big leaves that open up like this that become the acanthus leaves. And so these acanthus start to become the foundation of in Greece, and then it spreads from there into designs and into decorations and into basically architecture. Because they see it so much everywhere, it becomes part of their architecture. And then, of course, it spreads and spreads and spreads, and now you see them absolutely everywhere. Now, through time, just like cars, you can go through the 50s and the 60s and 70s. You can look at a car and you can say, oh, that one has wings on it. That's from the 50s, and so on and so forth. You can tell cars by looking at a car basically from what kind of time period that it comes from. Scrolls undergo the same type of design change. So the scrolls through the different time periods are going to change in their look, how they're going to be painted. And of course, different countries are going to paint them different. And so you have different countries painting them different and different timelines, and certain things are added during these timelines. And it starts out first. Let me just do this real quickly for you. But if I take my brush and if I paint just a general volute, let me just take a little brown and a little color here. If I paint just a general volute, let's just say I have the body of the scroll that comes down and around like this, and I'll show you more about painting this in just a second. But if I paint just a general volute just like this, a general volute like this, and sometimes it'll have the double-ended knob on both sides here. A general volute that's like this, we basically call this a Renaissance scroll, okay? And a Renaissance scroll means it has the decoration, and if I put on any leaves, it would be here basically to the inside. So you have this, they're very open. Sometimes you see them in the French Renaissance scrolls. They're just double-ended, what we call the C. It comes like on this, and then it comes back out on this way right here like that. The double-ended C, that's like this. So it's like a elongated comma stroke this way and this way. These are the Renaissance scrolls. And what happens in the Renaissance, they stay very open, very light. The Renaissance, during the Renaissance time period. And so throughout the years, throughout all the different monarchies, usually the scrolls, design periods are named after the monarch. So that's where you have your Louis the 14th, Louis the 15th, Louis the 16th. You have Georgian, you have Victorian, which is of course named after Queen Victoria. You have these design times that are named after the monarch. The monarch sets the look to it. And especially over in France, which we're painting the tapestries, the French, the Aubusson, the scrolls undergo quite a bit of difference between the Renaissance period and all the way up through Louis the 16th, Charles the 10th, and Napoleonic Regency styles. You'll see quite a few changes. So just like a car, they add different things, and the scrolls are going to add different things. As you get up into the pure Louis the 16th scrolls here, especially Louis the 14th and the Louis the 16th, they create a style of scrolls called Rococo. And the Rococo scrolls has not only the leaf coming here to the inside, like the Regency, it also has the leaf coming out here to both sides. So this would be a Rococo element here, where the leaves come to both sides here. So when you look at like this one right here, you would say this is more of a Regency style scroll here, little liner work coming here. This one that you see here, what kind is that? That's more Rococo. That's a Rococo style. Or and then the scrolls, so you'd have the decoration. You have what we call Baroque style scrolls. A Baroque style scroll is one that you say comes like this, and then maybe has another scroll crossing over like this, so you can have a double-sided scroll. They'll be crossing each other like this. Baroques cross each other. Not quite as much as you'll have another style called arabesque, but they don't do that in the, well, they do a little bit of it in the tapestry towards the 20th century. But basically, you're going to have your Renaissance up to your Rococo style, and then each monarch is going to change it slightly. Louis XIV, 15th, 16th. How do they change it? Well, Louis XIV, then they become very, very heavy. Louis XVI, they start getting very ornate and very light and airy, so there's more airspace in between them. All I want you to do, this isn't going to be this isn't a whole book on scrolls. We're using the scrolls to just decorate the thing. So I'm just going to show you some basic ways to paint scrolls. But I do want you to understand that there's a lot of history to scrolls. There's a lot of techniques and a lot of looks. It's not just a C scroll. So the scroll, it's going to change. And it's going to change through time periods in history. That happens in all styles. Rose mauling, which I'm a fanatic for rose mauling. That happens a lot in rose mauling. They change. The styles of them change. Okay, so let's go in there and look at a scroll. How are you going to go about painting a scroll? And we'll do a couple of them here. When you're going to start out, I use my little fusion brush here, and you'll see it in in a lot of your step photos. This one's a little older. It's been through quite a bit of paintings and stuff. So it's got, you could see the hairs on the end pushing up a little bit. When your fusion gets like that, you can, I'm not going to worry about it because it's just going to paint nice casual scrolls for me. But what you can do is just put it into some hot water, some not quite boiling, almost to boiling, and stick it in several times and get it hot, and then press it together to hold it, and then do it again and press it together to hold it. They use heat to shape the brush, and what you need to do is just get some heat back to it again to shape it again, okay? But it'll come back to shape. What we're going to do is your brush, when you have your brush here, you want to keep your scrolls kind of casual. Your brush has the flat part of the brush, and your brush has the chisel part of the brush, or almost. It's kind of bent there, but it has that part of the brush. And what you're going to do to paint a scroll is you want your paint to be a little bit looser, okay? Just a little bit loose so it flows. So you add a little more extender to it so that the paint is, so it will flow. So that when you do paint a scroll, when you do set it down here like this, you have enough paint to go the entire length of the scroll, okay? If your paint is too dry, it'll get draggy and it'll edge out. If it starts to bleed out a little bit there, you have too much moisture into your paint, okay? So you have to control how much paint is the consistency of your paint really is one of the most important parts here. So let's just kind of do a yellowish kind of scroll here. Maybe we'll put a little green into it. I have all different kinds of colors of them. In the painting here, you'll see here's some greens and yellows, and really shadowed on the shadow side, the lower side of the acanthus. This is the acanthus leaf, shadowed on this side with an edge of the brown and stuff. You'll see that. Sometimes I do, like on this one here, I get kind of the bluish colors and reddish colors into the acanthus this way, and you'll see that but these are the acanthus leaf, and so I'm going to show you some of that here in just a second as well. But generally what you're going to do is you fully load your brush here, okay? And what you have is you have the flat of the brush this way and the chisel of the brush. And basically all you're going to do is just set it down like this and come around and round that completely around like this, round to this side over here. And you're gonna slide right over onto its chisel down here. Now with a lot of them, what you do is you put the knob. You can have a knob coming back up the other side right here, okay? And this little split that I get right here, I love that when that happens, and that's just my paint being a little bit too dry. It's not quite wet enough, and the brush will split. But I love that when that happens, because it already starts to have a lot of interest to the scroll. It's happening right up here right away. So I let that happen a lot of times in scrolls, and I let that splitting happen off, and I just love it. And I love it when the hair is split on the top and stuff, because again, as long as you have good motion to it. Now the scroll has a body. And in the original scrolls, this is just a base. This is what's called a C, and this is the double C here. And so this would be a scroll body. Then later on, they started putting more of a knob on the scroll, like you see on this particular. Well, let's go into this lesson in here. You'll see more of the knob come into the scroll. So later on, they start building even more of a knob. Now, the knob can be pulled two ways. You can start on the chisel like this and come right down and just set your brush down, or you can start on the point of it and pulling it around. So you can start that way, or you can set it back down like this and pull it right around back up onto its chisel. So you can do both ways. I generally will mix them up within the painting. So sometimes I'll go that way, and sometimes I'll pull down around this way. So I get like a little hook sometimes out on the end of that. I like that. So that is basically the scroll right there, okay? Which the scroll is really the vine of the plant. Now what you do, once you put on the vine, what you do is you add the leaves. So in initial painting, the scroll was basically, especially into the Renaissance period, Renaissance scrolls, they could decorate them up with some comma strokes to the inside, only to the inside, and those would be suggestive of the leaves. So if I wanted to, if I'm moving further on besides this very simplistic Renaissance scroll here, and I start adding more, I would start adding additional strokes to the inside, representing basically more leaves to it here. And so I would start decorating scrolls up here, and this starts to look very much like some of you that painted Hindelopen, the Hindelopen scrolls. Now, how many do you add? At first, they start adding very simple, just shapes like this. Later on, a couple monarchs later, another 30, 40 years, and they start building more of the acanthus we're used to seeing, which is they come out here like this on the inside. Then a lot of times they put like a little S onto it like here, and then back out onto it again this way here. And what that does is it puts the little tip of the leaf on. So this would sit inside of a scroll that comes down around like this. This would sit, that little leaf would sit to the inside. So it starts out first like this, then they start building a little more, then they build more, they start building it more, and then eventually what happens is they start to build the leaves out to the other side, and you can put little S shapes out here like this, and then another little set down shape like that, and you start getting leaves to both sides of the scrolls, and they can come out as long as they flow out here, generally in all different angles like this. They can have them, come out many, many different ways. And of course, there's all different kinds of Louis XVI scrolls, and then more airy, and then very thin and stuff. And different design periods will be slightly different, but they all have, this is the body, which is the vein, this is the leaf, and then some have real heavy painted leaves, some have just suggestions of leaves. Some here I put knobs, different colors than what I have the bodies of it. This one gets very, very casual. I call this just a very casual interpretation of it. A fun design for painting. I wanted the flowers to be very light, transparent, casual, whimsy, and so I do the same thing here with the scrolls. They stay very casual and light. This type of flower would not look really pretty with a scroll that is really heavy and very structured and stiff. Very, very much perfect shape. The two are counter each other. So the artist, as they change some of the flowers, would also change the appearance of the scrolls so that the two can go together. So here with these scrolls, very clean. The flowers are very clean. They're a little soft, but they're very clean. Everything is very clean. Then as the flowers start to get more ornate, the petaling of the flowers gets heavier. the scrolls themselves can get heavier. So after, with the first ones, I might start like this. Then I can start adding shadows and other things to the scroll. And generally, when I shadow a scroll, what I do is, we'll step in just a bit here. What I do is I will come in like this and just tap right into the edge like this, and really just pick up that corner edge like that. And so what I do is I'll step off the side here just a bit, and I'll stroke it again, and you'll see I get that little edge here. Sometimes I like it a little bit streaky like that. I'll do it a couple of times. Sometimes I'll shadow like the bottom of this one and just pull that through. Sometimes I turn the shadow just to the outside, and I'll stroke just a whole heavy edge of shadow. So I get just an edge of shadow. I let it be a little different all the way around the painting here. Adding other little turned edges, interest edges in. Sometimes just adding extra strokes in like this and letting it get kind of wispy. Coming out is pretty. Letting the scroll get lighter and airier. You can see that. But what I want you to understand about these scrolls is there's going to be different shapes to them, and you're going to use your brush. You have the chisel of your brush. So if I'm going to do like an S stroke or anything, what I'm going to do is go from the chisel, press the brush down, and then wrap it right around the joint into the scroll. That would be the long part of the leaf here. And then to paint any of the other accents, just put a comma stroke here onto the inside like this, and put maybe another one out here outside like this. And you have a nice shaped leaf. Then just walk into a little shadow. Just walk right into a little shadow right here. Start here onto the inside like this. Maybe stroke it a couple of times so you get a couple of streaks in there. There like that. And you get a little shadowing to the inside of that. And each one, sometimes I'll shadow, like on here, I'll put down a yellow and then a little green and then a little brown. And I'll just move that through the painting. Which side is the shadow side of the leaf? There's not really a call to it. That's the artist's call. Sometimes we shadow what we call the short side. This is the short side. The inside turn is the shortest side. This is the outside, the long side. So my favorite of anything is to shadow the short side because I feel like it's turning and then you hit the light. But on some styles here, like you'll get out here, we'll shadow both sides. We'll create contrast. They made beautiful acanthus. Now, so this one right here, this particular style right here would be a Rococo Acanthus scroll. And this is actually the vein here. This is a leaf. This is the vein right here. This is a leaf of one color. This is a leaf of another color. And so here I have put down the base color, and then I've shadowed this on the short side, this one on the long side. I've actually shadowed both sides, leaving some light to the inside there. That gives a completely different look and powerful look to that particular scroll. So on really, really large scrolls, those are big, powerful scrolls that you have in that particular lesson. If the leaf is really, really wide, you can sit and you can take a little edge of dark and come back in on the other side here as well. So you would shadow both sides of the leaf, So maybe I take just a little edge. I have a wider one there. Maybe I take just a little edge right there and do that one there. That's an artistic call. There's no rule for that. And of course, as you get into scrolls into other countries and other styles and stuff, they'll say, Rosemary will have one way of doing it, and so on so forth. What I want you to understand is we're going to keep these scrolls very simple to paint because the flowers are all painted with it. We want to paint the scrolls with basically the same feeling that our flowers have so that they go together. We want to keep light and casual. We want to go from, basically when you're painting, you want to go from the flat of the brush, just curve right down onto the chisel. Sometimes you're going to take the end and put a cap out on the end and come back the other way. That's your basic scroll. Then you start at that, which is the vein. So sometimes the scroll will have a knob that you'll just join right in like that, and you can just join it in anywhere like that. Then your scroll's going to have some leaves, some turning inside leaves. Maybe it has a very simple leaf. Maybe it has more of the full acanthus leaf, which you stroke on the sides like that. and that's more of the Acanthus leaf. Then you can come in and shadow, and you can come in and put some highlights. But you're going to work from the flat of the brush right around to the chisel of the brush. And sometimes I like to paint with it at a slight angle. I find it it's kind of nice to paint with it this way and just slide the brush onto its side like that. So then you get that angle really nice, just like that. Okay, so there's a wide variety of scrolls into it, and you're going to see some different colors to them. The scrolls, there's a whole art to scrolls. We'll do more scrolls. I have a lot of videos on scrolls, strokes and scrolls, and I have which shows you structures of scrolls, and a very, very different way to paint the scrolls in the Louis XIV scrolls, where I paint more architectural structured scrolls, and we add the Regency elements to it. I didn't really add any of the Regency elements to it. I'll just show you a Regency scroll, because you will see it in Tapestry. I didn't add it this time. I kept mostly into the areas of the Louis, the 14th, 16th, and some Renaissance and looks to them. But a Regency scroll can get very, very structured. It can have a knob that spins heavier like that, and it'll come down around like this, and then it will have angles to it added to it like this. So this is more of a Regency style scrolls. These will get more into when we start painting architecturally and not as much decoratively, especially if you're doing this on vanities, cabinets up alongside of the doors and stuff, where you have angles and stuff onto the doors. They started adding the Regency. Of course, this comes in the Regency time period of the middle of the 18th century. The middle of the 19th century, 1850s, 1840s, the 1850s, depending on which country you're into. And actually, some of these start to appear in the earliest in France in around 1830s. So the Regency period is a little bit different, and it's different over in England as it is over in Germany. But they start adding some of these angles. It's just like the cars. Somebody starts rounding a car over, and every car manufacturer in the next few years starts rounding everything over, okay? But start adding angles and stuff to them. And so I have an entire video set on basically a Louis XIV that has some Regency look to it also, which, painting a Louis XIV scroll with the Regency elements into it. So there's some different elements and different ways in which you can add some of those. But the look of the scroll, so you have the scroll changing through times, and it can get very confusing, but the look of the scroll has elements to it, whether it's Rococo coming off of both sides, Renaissance coming to one side, Baroque crossing of the scrolls, Regency where it's adding right here. Then you have it decorated into its time period. How did Louis XIV use the scroll? Louis XV, Louis XVI, Charles X, how did King George, how did Queen Victoria, how did they use the scroll? It all makes it different. We're going to keep the scrolls this basic, simple. You're going to start out with some very simple ones here, and then with very simple movements of the brush, and then we'll add a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more to the scroll just as we go through the lesson, just like we're adding a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more to the flowers, okay? So onto your scrolls. You start out your first lesson with some simple, basic scrolls here. Paint your flowers. Your flowers now get a little bit more complicated, and your scrolls. When I did with this one, I got done is I just used, and you can do that. Sometimes if I feel like the flowers get kind of a nice light and airiness to them, I'll come out with just a little liner brush right here. It's not a liner brush. This was my number 4 round. And I'll step off the edge of the scroll and just do a little line, and that helps lighten up and airy up the look of the scroll just a little bit. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. On this one, it just adds a little more decoration to it to step off here and do a little line. But if you notice, everyone's a little different. That's the key to beautiful painting. Keep it all different, okay? So enjoy. I hope you enjoy the scrolls. Just keep them simple. Keep everything simple. This is Painted Simply, okay? And enjoy the rest of the book, and I'll see you next time here at the Jansen Art Studio. Bye-bye.